Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do an extra special, massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of my patrons, as I've had several hardware and software related computer issues over the last maybe 2 weeks, and fortunately, because I have Patreons, I can actually resolve these problems. So, as is the case if you've joined me on Patreon, and you're all going to get a shout out in a moment, you're well aware that that's probably the main thing I put in the reason for having it: to keep the show running, to maintain my equipment, make sure it's all hunky-dory, and having just bought a new hard drive and some new fans and various other things, including a projector, over the last few months, that's all been funded by my Patrons. So a massive thank you to all of you. The show literally would not run without your support. So a massive thank you to Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Alistair Main, Billy Highvolt, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Chow Young Cat, Dank, Dave Rakia Gafford, David Wayne Foster, Edwin Johnson, Irwin, Felix Hung, Fireball X, God Rockin', Jeranism, Joshua Balsimo, Kirsten Smith, Liam Nedrick, Life is Short, Matt, Nagara, Naibai, Qatar Craig, Reinhardt, Rene, Sally Ballis, Silver Umbrella, Skeptic936, Texas Mike, The Flat Earth Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock App, theflatearthchannel.com, Tina Baker and Tom Herkins. So a massive shout out to all of you for supporting me on Patreon, and as I say again, I really do appreciate all of your support. Now, we are joined by quite a few people in G Plus and Discord, so a very warm welcome to one and all.
Hello. Good morning.
Hey.
Yeah, I've made a whole bunch of changes, as Anthony's well aware, so software and hardware has all been messed with, the computer's been rejigged, everything's changed, and I was up till about 6 a.m. this morning fiddling with it, making sure it all ran perfectly. I did a little test with OBS to make sure it functioned perfectly. I didn't actually test the live section of it, so hopefully it all will go well when it comes to pressing the live button. If it doesn't, you'll hear me panicking on this recording. We shall see.
So you put in your new hard drive, right?
Yes. It's underutilised, as Anthony quickly pointed out. It's designed to run with much more modern equipment than I have, so on my 5-year-old PC, it's not necessarily being utilised to its fullest extent. However, it has definitely improved the functionality of the computer, and should I upgrade the computer, or should the CPU die more likely, as I overclock the hell out of it, that'll probably die eventually, and when it does, I'll change the motherboard, and that hard drive won't need replacing for a more modern one when and if I do change it. And given that I use this equipment daily, and it's fairly heavily utilised, eventually it will break, like all computers. So I'm more than happy to, having overspent a little bit, I feel, justify it by saying it's what was the word you used, Anthony? Future-proofing my computer. Yeah. So
yeah, because the worst thing would be if you spent 500 quid on a motherboard and processor, and then put in your knackered old SSD drive that doesn't run quick as what the modern stuff does. And although it would be working, it would just be underutilizing. It's like running in second gear when you could be in fifth on the motorway doing 90. You're pottering around in like 20 mile an hour in second gear because time's moved on. But it's all good. It's future-proofing in the sense that it saves you buying one later on. And when you are ready to buy one, summer next year maybe or whatever, then you're ready to literally unplug the old motherboard, take that out, plug in a new one, and it'll just work.
Yeah, that's certainly how I've done PCs in the past. You buy them piecemeal, don't you? You upgrade what you can, but so long as, like in this instance, you buy something that's good, you don't have to change it when you change the next piece. You just change whatever piece is broken for a more modern one. And given that you've bought good equipment going forward in the past, your new equipment won't need everything upgrading around it. So there's certain things in this computer that are absolutely ancient. Certainly the audio card. I know it's not probably as good as the super modern audio cards that you can buy, separate audio cards, but certainly better than everything that people have got on their motherboards, regardless of how much they rave about how it's isolated, blah blah blah. They're just not as good as an actual sound card that costs 150 quid or whatever. So my sound card is no different to a modern sound card that does the same thing, but it's better than, you know, having to buy a motherboard specifically to have sound functionality. I can just slot the old card in. It still functions, even though it's probably 15 years old. Maybe not 15 years, but probably 10.
Even the modern boards now are getting Toslink outputs, you know, like the flashing light output. So you just plug in one fiber optic cable going out your motherboard or out your sound card that's integrated onto your board. Plug that into your little lamp or your DAC or whatever it is that you're powering on the output, and then boom, straight away you've got a digital output that's lossless. And so times I've moved on really, and it's lovely to see like decent. What's weird though is it's took like 30 years to get to this point. I thought we would have been at this point in 2001.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question on the topic?
Yeah, of course you can.
Anthony, I've heard in the past that it's better to leave your computer on, never turn it off, because turning on and off damages it over time. Is there any truth to that?
No, it just wears the button out, and over time your button gets slack, and it just stops working. I've seen well-worn machines where they've been on and off, on and off, on and off. And I know it's only a switch, but the switch ultimately is the reason why your machine turns on. And then the problem with that is that when you come to fault find and find out why your machine won't turn on, and you realise, or most people don't check the button, so they end up buying a whole new PC just because the switch is knackered. And that's useless. So I don't know. I don't think it does damage it long term, but it makes it difficult to fault find when it does eventually fail.
So there's two sides to that answer. One is that all electronics have a finite life. Doesn't matter what it is, and the more you use it, the more that lifespan will reduce. So not using it, i.e., switching it off rather than having it continually powered, will extend the life of almost any electronic component. However, there's the flip side of that, where underuse can cause problems, dry joints and various other things. So you do still want to use the thing. It's like a car. You know, if you don't use it at all, it'll break. If you use it all the time, inevitably you'll need to maintain it. So it's a toss-up between the two. But personally, I would say don't leave your computer constantly running unless there's a necessity to do so. Turn it off. However, when you're going to find a fault, well, when you turn it on, when you post, when Windows loads, that's when you'll find there's an issue, when it's starting back up. So if by that standard you just leave your computer on all the time, you might find there's a problem that doesn't necessarily manifest itself until you have a power cut, and then you can't get your computer back on because it's riddled with problems that just haven't manifested because you haven't restarted. So the hard drive problem I've recently had, if I'd have just left the computer on, I probably wouldn't know now, because it would have been left on from then till now, and it wouldn't have told me there was an issue. And then it could have just failed. Disaster. But because I've turned it off and on again, essentially, it's come up with an error. This thing's still working, but it's told me that I need to fix something. Great. Modern computers are like that. So before you lose all your data or something terrible happens, you can fix a problem. But I wouldn't leave the computer on.
It's self-diagnosing. When you turn it on and off, it's self-diagnosis prior to running the next time.
Not necessarily self-diagnosing, it's just that if there's a problem, that's when it'll manifest.
Got it. Hey, Chaco.
Hello.
Paul. Flat
Hello, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hey, I need to give a good shout out, guys.
Do you want to wait till we're live, or is it?
Liverpool Football Club beat Man City at the weekend, puts them back top of the league comfortably now with 8 points clear before Christmas as well. Good weekend.
Yeah, and Anthony, you called the score ahead of time, by the way.
Yeah, I did. I predicted it would be 3-1. Anfield would get 3 goals. Man City would get 1 goal. And it ended up being exactly 3-1. If I'd have put money on that, I'd have earned the odds would be fantastic.
You should have told me that. I'm 1 minute ahead of you. I could have put money on them.
Yeah.
Glad that didn't reach the live show.
Yeah,
That's fine.
That's why I said it now.
Okay, 60
It's a
seconds.
good game.
Does that 60-second warning mean I've got to actually start early just because I've killed the conversation?
Oh, I
with it?
thought you went already.
No, I said 60 seconds thinking there'd be a little bit more conversation, but I might just start anyway now.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum, which you should definitely all join. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion right here, right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Sleeping Warrior, Chocolate Saiyan, Paul, Flatzoid, and I think that's it for G+. How you all doing?
Yo, yo, yo.
Very good.
Good afternoon, hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're also joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord as well, so hello to everyone in the Discord server.
But let's focus the questions on the Discord server because they never speak, and I don't even
Hold on.
understand why.
I mean, it might be an issue with my end, so I can see people flashing. Can you say something, Travis? Could be a technical issue on my end. To be fair, I didn't actually check Discord this morning.
Yeah, probably is.
Okay, right, I'll leave Discord and rejoin. Any chance you can do the housekeeping just while I see if I can sort out my technical issue with Discord?
10th Man, you'll have to do it. I can never remember them.
No problem. Any signs of Earth curvature?
No.
No, not on Earth.
Okay. I guess not from South Africa, right, Flatzoid?
Nope, definitely not from here.
Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No.
None? They say
Maybe on a roundabout on Earth?
don't they say we're rotating at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator?
They say so, but nobody seems to be able to prove it.
They make stuff up. We're not moving. That's just silly.
So 99% of the Western world is on the stationary surface, and they believe they're moving, though?
Yes, it's the power of suggestion. Nobody feels movement, but yet they all believe they're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator while going around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. It's imagination. Nothing more.
All right. Any scientific evidence
Well,
for gravity?
Somebody interrupted. Say again.
Can't have scientific.
That's someone in Discord. Did I get it working?
Can't have scientific evidence of a concept.
Hold on 1 second. Can I just check with Discord to see if I got them actually working?
Yeah, somebody piped up.
Somebody making the wind sound.
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah, but it was. I think anybody flashing? Anybody in Discord?
Do you know what we need? We need the good, the bad, and the ugly music.
I was just thinking of that. I was just thinking of that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but no one's even trying to say hello, so I don't know if it works or not until somebody actually says. There we go. No one. They're all on mute. It's because I've rejoined.
I'm not.
Hey, Arwin.
Discord.
On mute.
Hello.
Nobody going to cooperate in the Discord server?
Someone in Discord, give us a mic check, please.
Jesus wept. Can someone in Discord just say hello? For the love of fuck. There's about 10 of you in there.
I have to wonder why they're even in there.
Well, okay. I give up on Discord.
Can somebody hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Someone just said hello.
Thank you.
Wait.
Well, we have Discord working. Thank you for being so cooperative. Feel free to continue, 10th man.
All right. Any scientific evidence for gravity?
Ha, no.
Can't even define it. Let alone. How many people think gravity is a force? All of them. We know that Einstein replaced Newtonian principles with bendy space-time. Well, honestly, nobody refers to gravity in the Einstein context. They all revert back to the pre-World War I position, and it's been superseded, guys. Superseded doesn't mean refined; it means replaced, as the definition clearly states. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, but it's basically one unproven concept replaced by another unproven concept. So there never was any scientific evidence in the first place.
Anthony, why did they replace it? Why did they go from Newtonian to Einsteinian?
I have no idea. I wish I knew that answer. Do you know why they did it?
I'm trying to see if it had to do with his relativity in any way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah.
Because mass doesn't attract mass.
Because Newtonian can only work for flow.
Say that again, Flatsoid.
I said because Newtonian can only work for close approximations, not far. So they needed to work out something else for the planetary systems.
Any comments other than that? All right. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No. It's worth pointing out
Discord.
Ranty's point from yesterday. Ranty made up. I heard Ranty talking. Is it yesterday?
Yeah, I
or the
hear
day
you.
before? And he was saying about how the seismology reports.
Thanks. It just seemed a bit quiet. That's all.
Yeah, we hear you.
Say what?
All sorted on Discord now.
It just seemed a bit quiet. Normally, there's always someone talking here.
Someone was talking.
So Ranty brought up an article that was referencing the Quadrilla drill site in Lancashire, and they're trying to do fracking, and they've been telling everybody how safe it is, and all the protesters have been getting arrested because it's not safe. And there was a back and forth that went to court numerous times, and in the end, they were allowed to carry on doing it. Problem is, it started causing earthquakes that were bigger than the magnitude that they were allowed in the limits of what is considered to be safe. So it's been cancelled. And the reason for the earthquakes happening against the science was because seismology predictions were not reliable. Yet it's the seismograph or seismology predictions that they use to justify the belief that there's a molten iron core. Yet if you look in the Quadrilla drill site in Lancashire that's just been abandoned, you can just now recently, like in the last couple of days, you can see clearly that the seismology predictions were unreliable. Yet that's their citation for proof of a molten iron core, seismology. Boom.
How deep were they fracking? Do you know the depth of the fracking?
I don't know. It's been on that long now, and it's changed that many times. I've not even kept up with it, to be honest. It was a big deal, and now it's stopped, and it seems to be done. But
Well, to put a summary on it, it wasn't as deep as the deepest hole ever dug, was it?
no, and they didn't get that right. So if they're digging down as far as 8 miles with the deepest hole that ever drilled in the Kohler super deep borehole, and they're basing results on sorry, my eBay's flicking off. They're basing the results based on seismology. Well, we know that when they're fracking for natural gas in Lancashire, their predictions based on seismology and seismograph interpretations were unreliable, and they were having big earthquakes as a result of it because they were getting them wrong. So if they're going to argue for seismology to prove P waves and S waves are only possible on it, and Conspiracy Cats pushes this point, well, they're not reliable. So he's pushing stuff that's not reliable, and people just like they take it out of his hand like a bird feeding seed. And I'm like, everybody in this topic seems to be on their side, happy to accept the convenient lie, no matter how ridiculously crappy the quality of the evidence actually is. It's ridiculous.
So basically what you're saying is if it's not reliable near surface, how is it going to be reliable deeper than that?
I'm saying that seismology is not a good argument for molten iron core. It's rubbish, but people
Of
seem
course.
to want to believe it.
Well, it's unreliable.
Of course, it's terribly unreliable.
All right. Any evidence for the distance of the sun?
Ha! Not a chance.
Why not?
Because nothing lines up. There's just no direct indication that it is in any specific position, no matter what you presuppose the Earth to be.
What do we have a ballbusters on this spectroscopy? Yes, say that word slowly.
You can always assume things about that light that you see based on some deduction, but that doesn't prove that it is a physical object in any specific location.
I was trying to tie the spectroscopy, if I said it wrong, with the last question with the seismology. They got instruments that they say can do things, but they don't.
Next question.
Any evidence of the radius of the Earth, the R value?
No.
Discord?
What kind of radius are you talking about?
Spherical?
Ooh. Now that's presupposing a lot.
That's unfortunate because then we would have to go back to question 1 where we asked, is there any signs of Earth curvature, which we would need for in R value? Yeah, we don't got that. So it's unfortunate. That's why we're here.
Anybody in Discord want to say anything before I move on? Okie dokie. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
All right, I'm gonna hijack this point because I've been listening to different people's conversations in recently on both sides of this, and ballers hate this question, and flat earthers are not arguing it well enough. It's really simple, right? One of the parameters is the vacuum of space, 10 to the minus 17 torr, basically a zero value. Ballers claim that there's a gradient, therefore it's okay, and you can have a gradient, therefore that means you can have gas pressure in an open system. And they referenced going outside, right? The problem is you can't have a gradient in the first place, and we've been drumming that point home for ages, and that's getting through. The other point that's not getting through is the other parameter is the vacuum of space. Now, if you go onto Google and type in what is the world's biggest vacuum chamber, you'll come across the Glen something center, Plum Glen Center or whatever it's called in, I think it's in Ohio in America. And it's
Sandusky.
The one pardon?
Sandusky, Ohio.
It's the one where they did the feather and the bowling ball because it's the tallest one. Now, if you look at the construction of that vacuum chamber, that's essentially space, right? But they have to have the chamber to make the vacuum. Well, it's the same point for the ball earth gas pressure gradients that we're in, because you can't have the vacuum without that 15 foot thick concrete walls. You can't have that vacuum.
I think it's 8 foot thick, reinforced, aluminum shell inside, and the doors weigh 5 million pounds each, according to QE.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, that's the vacuum of space that represents, and it doesn't even get that far because it starts leaching the atmosphere through the thick concrete eventually anyway. But that's the size of the vacuum chamber that is the biggest one in the world for them to get somewhere close towards the vacuum that they tell us is space. And that vacuum in space, you can't have the gas pressure that we're breathing next to it, because if you could, you wouldn't need the vacuum chamber. So remember that it's not the open pressure or the gradient in our atmosphere. It's the open container in the vacuum of space, and it fucks off into space and it doesn't come back immediately. So don't be afraid to ram this point down their throats. These ballers refuse to acknowledge that the vacuum torr value of space decimates their argument when it's an open system. You need a container and or a mega powerful force that you haven't even got. Even if you had gravity, it's nowhere near powerful enough to compensate for the vacuum, the differential. They can't have the gradient. They do need a container. And when you go outside, we must be in a contained environment because you can't have it. It all disappears into space. So don't be afraid of ramming it down their throats. Don't be afraid of telling them it's a vacuum. It's not the gas pressure that we're breathing that we can demonstrate with an open pipe. It's the vacuum. So go into that big, massive vacuum chamber in Ohio and then try opening the doors when it's got the full vacuum set to it, and you won't be able to do it. But if you did it, it'd just immediately suck you inside or blow you inside from the outside, whichever way around. It doesn't matter. The point is that you can't have it, and you need 8-foot thick containers to be able to contain that vacuum. And that's what they're telling us is that we live in. It's completely and utterly absurd, and it is that our strongest point. And obviously, gravity can't be the container. I don't know where that's come from. I think it's fight the flat Earth, but gravity can't explain this. It doesn't do anything. It's an effect that we think we're seeing, and there's no testable science to demonstrate what gravity is or even define it. So don't let them get away with it. It completely destroys their model, guys.
Anthony, do you know where they say?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you say that again, Tony?
Hold on.
Just
Go.
kidding.
10th man, then Highlander, please.
Yeah, Anthony, the ISS. Do you know what they say the vacuum of space is where the ISS is 250 miles up?
Yeah, it's almost a vacuum of space, isn't it? It's the beginning of like what they call deep space, isn't it? Once you get to the above the Kármán line, and they're getting up towards the Kármán line, there's very little difference between it on their model.
So they're saying that they're not in it fully, but they're near it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now if we take the moon missions, they went past that because they obviously went to the moon, they say, correct?
So Philip Cooper just puts there, that's conflation. The structure has nothing to do with the vacuum. It's essential. You can't have that vacuum without a structure, right? The structure is necessary to resist the 14.7 psi externally. Yeah, we're in that 14.7 psi externally, aren't we, Phil Cooper? Exactly, blow you inside, as you said it. Yeah, that's the point. If there's 14.7 psi on the surface of the Earth, on the outside of a ball, and that's existing next to the vacuum of space, even with a gradient that can't possibly exist, it all gets burst into space. Now, you can deny as much as you want. It doesn't change the fact that you can't have gas pressure without a container. It kills your model. You can't be a ball earth believer if you realize the strength and magnitude of this argument point. It kills your model, guys. Sorry,
Indeed. And the only way for the gas not to burst off is if the entire rest of the container, which would have to be outer space according to their model, would be filled up with some super light, very undense gas, and then maybe it would kind of stay in place or something. But yeah, a vacuum is just a vacuum, and there's no way it's going to stick to that ball. You'd have to subject that little ball to some insane forces, and gravity is not one of them. It's not even a force. And even if you presuppose it's a force, then it's too weak a force to ever be able to do that.
Back to my point with Anthony, if I may. So how thick were the walls?
Oh, sorry, you're still on the same point. My bad. Highlander's just waiting in the wings. That was all. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. I'll let Highlander come in after. So Anthony, how thick were the walls of the Apollo missions that supposedly went to the moon? Were they 8 feet thick?
Well, depending on the astronaut that you ask, it could have been the size of, 3 sheets of aluminum foil?
Well, thank you, Chocolate. I was
Reynolds
looking for
wrap.
that. So in the 10 to the minus 17 part of the Tor, which is the distance between the edge of our Earth to the moon, that part, 3 layers of aluminum did well, versus on Earth, you need 8 feet just for 10 to the minus 6. Because that's what I think that chamber in Sandusky is, 10 to the minus 6, if I recall. Something wrong with those numbers, would you say, Highlander?
Yeah, but is it not switched the other way round? I mean, is the pressure not on the inside of the container once you go up into space? Whereas on the Earth, you've got the pressure on the outside of the container pushing inwards.
What?
That was my point. It takes 8-foot walls reinforced in an aluminum shell and doors that weigh 5 million pounds each to fight off 14.7.
Right. So how much would you need to fight off if you took that same container up into space?
Well, that's what chocolate
You
said.
wouldn't-
3 layers
you
of
wouldn't-
aluminum
you
fights
wouldn't
off
need
10 to
any
the minus
container, would
17
you?
torque.
Hold on, just let
Because you
hold
don't
on.
have any pressure pushing from the outside in.
Do you want to conclude your point or reiterate your point, Highlander? HB.
There's no proof there's any space outside of
I was
the
going to get to that,
container.
Arwin. Well said.
I want to know how Highlander is still actually a ball earther. You understand that gas pressure can't exist all by itself. It
Don't
requires
even
the
get me
container.
started with this.
It was a great long silence. He's doing it same thing he does to me. So there was a long silence. You were asked to reiterate your point. You chose not to. Now Anthony's talking. Please don't interrupt him. Just because he's shitting all over your religion, just let him.
I just want to know how you defend your position when you know that you need a container for gas pressure.
And
and
a
what do you think
container
of
obviously
shuttle?
is Tech Man just
Hold on,
described.
Chocolate. Hold on.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Highlander.
Well, I asked Sleeping Warrior, what does he think the shuttle is? That's a container for the gas pressure, is it not?
Yeah, but is the container of the? Did you say the shuttle? Is that what you said? The shuttle?
Yeah, when the shuttle goes into space, yeah,
Yeah. Is that
the
8
roles
foot
are
thick?
reversed. The pressure is on the inside, not the outside. Yeah.
The shuttle doesn't
I know
go
for a
to space.
pseudoscientist like you, Sleeping Warrior, that's hard to grasp.
Okay, look,
Yeah,
no need for the
but
ad homs. No,
that's
just
how
let
it
him
works.
respond. Thank you,
So-
Highlander.
We know that the Ohio vacuum chamber is like 8 foot thick with steel rebar reinforcement with whatever extra reinforcements it has, right? We know that's what's required to contain that pressure or the vacuum, stopping them from merging into each other and immediately equalizing with their own pressure, right? That's what's required on Earth. You're telling me that the tin can that's supposed to go into space has got the same strength, stopping it from immediately bursting the vacuum into the vacuum of space, yet it's made of little tinfoil aluminium, right? Are you serious?
4 layers of
And-
aluminum for the lunar
Hold on,
landing.
Chocolate, hold on.
And,
That's just
and
4 layers
Sleeping
of
Warrior,
aluminum
you as a
for the lander.
pseudoscientist know for a
Whoever's
fact
rumpusing Highlander,
the
can you
space
stop,
shuttle
please?
is
I just want to
made
hear
of a couple
Highlander's
of-
response. So, can you just stop rumpusing Highlander, whoever's doing it in the Discord? I don't care who. Just let Highlander say his piece. Thank you.
I just want to know how Sleeping Warrior knows that what the space shuttle is actually made of.
Well, I can compare the size of the vacuum chamber in Ohio with the thickness of the metal that they tell us that the shuttle's made of. And I can quite comfortably say that they are nowhere near similar. Yet we know that to get anywhere near the vacuum of space, the vacuum chamber in Ohio is 8 foot thick in concrete, rebarred, strengthened, you name it. It's the Superman chamber. That's what's required to separate the gas pressure that we breathe from the vacuum of space. Well, there's pressure inside that shuttle when it takes off. So what do they do with the pressure? Do they exhaust it out somehow? And what do they do? How do they do that? You can't have the pressure without
Well,
containing
how
somehow.
are you testing that you need the same strength container for the pressure when it's in the inside compared to when the pressure's on the outside?
Yeah,
What-
I can answer that, Tony.
Oh, let
Although this is
Sleeping
a
Warrior.
great presupposition on Darwin's.
Arwin, just let Sleeping Warrior. Thank you.
So are you trying to tell me that the direction of the travel of the pressure over the vacuum is in any way different one way over the other?
Well, one's pushing out and one's pushing in.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a big difference.
What is the difference?
I just want to know what test you did to show that you need the same strength of container, if that's your claim.
Look, I looked at, so what for the benefit of the audience, he hasn't answered my question. I asked him what was the difference that would be required one way over the other, and I didn't get an answer. He deflected by asking me a question, and the research that
you answered my question by asking that. I asked you how you compared or what test you did to prove that you need to have the same strength of container. Yeah, and you answered that with your question. Yeah, that's what you flat earthers do. You don't answer the question; you just ask another one.
I looked at the vacuum chamber.
What test did you do?
I looked at the vacuum chamber in Ohio. I looked at the strength of the vacuum that they can achieve, which is not space. It's not really close to space either. It's the best that they can get. But ultimately, I can see by virtue of the size and the scale of that chamber that you need a significant amount of reinforcement to have the differential that they tell us is the Earth's pressure of 14.7 psi compared to the vacuum of space. It's required to have a container, but we don't have a container on your model. So my question is, regardless of the size and the scale of the container, which we know is huge, how do you have the gas pressure on an open system without gravity as a force and without a container? Please.
Right, so your answer to my question is you took a look.
Yeah, I looked at the size of the vacuum chamber in Ohio to see how they could do it, and it requires a shed load of containment with concrete rebar, steel walls, and basically a fortress. So my question is, where's the fortress on Earth to separate it from the vacuum of space, please?
Hold on, I'm still trying to understand your answer to my question. Yeah, I asked you what test you did,
Sleeping Warrior.
Yeah, to prove that you need the same strength of container when you send a shuttle up into space when the pressure is on the inside rather than the outside.
Fine.
And your answer to that
hold on,
is
Highlander, hold on 1 second. Shout out to Earth is Seriously Flat for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. It says girls won't procreate with globe zombie animals. Well, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We've come full circle. So you're now asking, you've then made that declaration that was then followed up previously on this little roundabout by Anthony asking you what the difference is. What's the difference between the shuttle with the pressure pressing out, trying to go into outer space, or the actual concrete room and rebar just described by Anthony? He asked you in response to that what the difference is. That's where we got last time. You felt you didn't get clarity to your question. He's given it you and told you what he's looked at, and you've said, so you've looked at something. So yes, so we're at the same place, just you, Highlander, now need to clarify what the difference is between the two. Do you want to re-ask your question, Anthony?
And let's not forget, you made the assertion that there was a difference, and I asked what is the difference when the polarity is the opposite way around, please?
Right.
Right, so when you said you had a look, what is the pressure within inside the rocket?
We've covered this. He's covered it. He's told you 10 to the minus 6 torr compared to the region of space that the shuttle will be in, about 10 to the minus 8 torr. Covered. Clarified. Your question still stands to you, Highlander. What's the difference? Pressing out versus pressing in? Who cares? Well, no, I won't lead you. You tell us what the difference is.
Well, the difference is the pressure is pushing out the way. Yeah, and there is nowhere near the same kind of pressure within the shuttle as what you would experience here on Earth.
Okay, so can I just let me just get it straight, just then and let Anthony respond. So you're saying the force inside the shuttle pressing out isn't anywhere near as much as the container that is the vacuum chamber described by Anthony with the outside pressure trying to press in. You're saying that the force pressing in is significantly more when pressing on the walls of a thick vacuum versus the pressure inside the chamber that is the shuttle in Narnia with the gas pressure trying to press out into the second law of thermodynamics violation. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I took a look.
Okay.
And that's apparently good enough.
No worries. Anthony has already responded to that also and pointed out in conclusion that if you're saying there's a difference between the container that is the space shuttle versus the container that is the vacuum chamber, then how do you have gas pressure without a container on Earth? That was his response.
Well, I asked what test he did.
We've covered this. We've covered this. We've covered this. We've covered this. He's got a question to you. How do we have gas pressure without a container, given that you're arguing about the difference in outward pressure versus inward pressure when describing two different containers and two different, apparently, vacuums? Anthony's asking, how can you have the gas pressure in the first place if there's no container around Earth in your religion?
Right, so his answer to me is by asking, how can you have gas pressure without a container?
No, he described quite eloquently how he made his comparison, what he had looked at, what values were stated, and the rhetoric of your space vacuum. Your response being, there's a difference between pressing in and pressing out. Anthony's response has just been summarised now twice by me, that it makes no odds about the difference between these two containers. Your marble in a space vacuum doesn't have a container. So how do we have gas pressure in the first place if there's no container around Earth? That's his question. You've dodged it 3 times.
Well, there is no container around the Earth.
We know around your religion of Earth there's no container, so the gas would fill the space. So no, we're not a marble in a vacuum because the gas would fill the space. So just saying we don't have a container isn't going to be an address to the fact that you need one, as detailed in this argument with a vacuum that's got a container and a alleged space shuttle in a second law of thermodynamics violation that's also a container, so it can have gas pressure. Apparently the shuttle needs to be a container, so the men inside that container can have gas pressure when they're in the vacuum that doesn't exist. Yet here on Earth we don't need a container, apparently. Well, that's utter horseshit, isn't it? The gas would fill the space the same as it would for the shuttle, which doesn't exist and doesn't go to space. That's a second law of thermodynamics violation. That system has us with gas pressure next to a vacuum. A nonsense impossibility.
Okay, so if you're saying that the gas would fill the space, have you actually tried?
It's called the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy would increase. It's a natural law. I don't say it. It's a natural law. It's called the second law of thermodynamics.
So have you actually tried the experiment?
Are you dumb? Natural law. Did I say the word experiment? What's the difference between a scientific law and an experimentally valid piece of scientific evidence? What's the difference? Go.
Natural.
Is this why you're not letting me ask?
What's the difference between a natural law and a valid experiment, i.e. scientific... You're just talking through me, asshole. Now you've been smashed. I'm asking you. I didn't use the word experiment. You did. That was your word. Have you done the experiment?
Is that because you've never actually done an experiment?
I'm asking you in regards to this argument and the rebuttal regarding the second law of thermodynamics, which is a natural law, if you appreciate the difference between natural law and scientific evidence, i.e. experiment. Do you know the difference or not?
Right, so what experiments have you done?
Do you know the difference between a natural law... I'm going to kick you out because it's the end of your time here, Highlander. Highlander. There's no experiment in... Highlander, you're not listening. You're rumpusing because you're being battered. I've asked you a question. I'm going to ask you a third time. Then I'm going to remove you from the conversation if you don't give me a closed answer. Do you know the difference, yes or no answer, between natural law and experimental scientific evidence? Yes or no?
Yes.
What's the difference? Tell me.
Right. So now I answered your question. Have you ever
What,
done
with a yes?
experiment?
With a yes?
Oh, here we go again.
With a yes. That's not an answer. What is the difference? Tell me by giving me citations for your explanations, or at the very least an actual answer beyond a yes. Yeah, I do know the difference between scientific evidence and natural law. Well, that's not going to suffice. I now need you to demonstrate you know that difference by telling us what they are. Both of them. Go.
Why should I answer your question?
Because you've asked me for experimental validity to a natural law, you complete fucking retard. And if you understood the difference between the two, you wouldn't be asking me for experimental validity to a natural law, you complete idiot. Clearly you don't know the difference, or you wouldn't be asking me for experiment, now would you? Because you'd know that it's not a process of the method that is science. It's a natural law.
But you're the one that's claiming that the law is being broken.
Sorry, there's no experiment. You've asked me if I've done an experiment to prove this, I'll say it again for about the 5th time, natural law, not experimental evidence, which is what you're asking me for, demonstrating admirably you don't know the difference between the two.
You're the one claiming that the natural law is being violated.
You asked me for an experiment.
You're the one making that claim.
You
right?
asked
So
me
I'm
if
asking you
I
to
backed
give
it with
evidence
experiment.
being
He's an
violated.
asshole. You asked me for an experiment, didn't you? You asked me for an experiment, didn't you?
I asked you if you have ever tried an experiment, Nathan.
Yeah, and we're talking
I know
about the
Sleeping
second.
Warrior
In
doesn't have a clue how to
response,
do
he's never going to
scientific
shut up.
experiment.
In response to me pointing out that it's a natural law, the second law of thermodynamics, your response, have you ever done an experiment? Why? We're talking about a natural law. Clearly you don't understand how natural laws come to pass and how scientific evidence comes to pass. They're different and you don't realise that.
Right, but if we've actually been to space, then
Can't go to space. It's a violation of a natural law. The second law of thermodynamics, the one you whistle past and asked me for experimental validity. You've not addressed it. You've now asked me about space, presupposing this violation of a natural law, having not defined the difference between experimental data and natural laws, and now you're going to go on to presuppose your fundy belief in a sky vacuum, having not addressed a single sodding word I've said about this natural law called the second law of thermodynamics, which would dictate that the gas would fill the space if the Earth was in a vacuum without a container.
not if you have a pressure gradient. There is no.
That's bollocks! It's bollocks. You can't have a pressure.
Wow.
Go ahead. Actually, this is where I step back.
ends.
Everyone else, this is where Anthony gets the reins back. Go ahead, Anthony.
How do you have the pressure gradient in the first place without the containment?
Oh, you're a pseudoscientist. Until you give me the details of your egg experiment, then yeah, nothing you can say.
I'll say it once
has
more. I'll
any
give him a
weight
last chance,
whatsoever.
Anthony. Then he's got
Yeah.
it. Then he's going to go.
yeah.
He's just done the same thing to
This
you.
is what
Hold on,
y'all
everyone.
got.
Everyone in G plus. Can you not hear me? No, he's done the same thing to Anthony as he did to me. Sorry, you don't know the difference between
No,
natural
I've
law.
asked Anthony
That's where he goes. That's
several
where he goes.
times.
That's where he goes.
Yeah.
He's ignored me. I've moved past it back when he gave a straw man argument. Now he doesn't. Now he doesn't enjoy the privilege of talking anymore. Because no, you haven't addressed the natural law that is the second law of thermodynamics, which would dictate that entropy would increase and the gas would fill the available volume. Now, in your religion of a marble in a vacuum, the gas would fill that space. That's the end of this argument, not addressed by Highlander, just rumpused when it gets to the conclusion that we admirably demonstrate, or in this instance, Sleeping Warrior admirably demonstrates that we've got fundamentalist religious zealots who will circle jerk us around and just assert straw men about gradients. You can't have gas pressure gradients without a container. It's a delta of gas pressure. First you have gas pressure, then you have a gas pressure gradient. The gas would still fill the space without a container. It's not an address to the argument. He hasn't addressed the argument, and Anthony summarised it beautifully before we went on this merry dance with me getting my blood pressure up, rather than Anthony. No, circle-jerking assholes. You've got to address the fact that it's a violation of a natural law. It's not backed by experiment, it's a natural law. But these twats don't know the difference between the two, and will ask me if I've got an experiment. No, it's a natural law, never to be defied ever.
What's the answer to my question, Highlander?
I've excluded him. He's just going to circle jerk you and tell you about pressure gradients, which is a delta of the question you've asked. Doesn't address your question about where you get gas pressure from. He never will address it. He won't get gas pressure from a containerless system in a vacuum. So he's just got to rump us and talk through us, and I'm tired of it. He's had 2 or 3 opportunities. That's the end. Did we conclude housekeeping?
No, we got one more. Can anyone give a single viable scientific hypothesis in the entire history of either astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, sir. They're observational sciences. They're not actually science. Those that think that the breeding patterns of birds are some kind of science, that's a mistaken belief, otherwise known as pseudoscience.
Well said. Okay, so
Anyone else?
Go on.
There is also plenty of models which are also not science.
Correct. I'll do a quick plug and then anyone free for all. So over the next few weeks, hopefully on a series of videos, myself, Sleeping Warrior, and Quantum Eraser will be doing an expose on each and every one of the housekeeping questions. So I've got a tentative agreement that Anthony will actually do this with us, so hopefully he'll join in the fun. But essentially it was us 3, along with admittedly a shitload of help from everyone else on the panel, but I'm sure everyone else will concede. If you feel butthurt about this, speak now or forever hold your peace. But us 3 will do a fairly concise discussion around the whys and wherefores of how each of the housekeeping questions A, come to pass, B, absolutely annihilate the heliocentric religion, how the phraseology is used, and how the counter-arguments may come, or more likely, the misapprehension of what's actually being stated in the question. So, in other words, an all-encompassing, detailed expose of how each question makes you win an argument when you're attacking a globehead in terms of their fundamentalist religious assertions that the Earth is a sphere in a sky vacuum called outer space. So that will come hopefully once we've tied down the times and whens and wherefores between myself, Quantum Eraser, and Sleeping Warrior, and anyone else who moans and says, no, I had a major part in this, which may or may not happen, but either way.
I had a major part in this, and hey, you need somebody to interrupt John regularly, so...
Maybe.
Long overdue.
We'll take a vote.
Tool
yeah, and I want Chocolate with me as well. We need to tag team with that.
I will do one with Chocolate and Arwen separate comedy version, and we'll never air it.
Well, how about what we'll do is
I'd be interested in doing my part.
How about we do it this way then? How about if Anthony, myself, and Quantum Eraser dissect up concisely, like in a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute slot, the housekeeping question, and then the other participants who are obviously around and had a part in developing those questions come in after the concise summary to discuss it more generally. So it might end up being that each show becomes an hour, but the first 15 minutes will be a really, really concise, probably just Quantum Eraser mostly, a presentation style, and then we'll discuss it together. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Like a good introduction summary and then an open discussion about it. Great.
Exactly.
Can I suggest something? If you have a short version so that it's chewable and digestible by who we want to send it to, 5-10 minutes long at the most, and then followed by an interaction that goes into it to follow, makes the hour or whatever long show. So you have 2 versions of it. You have 10-minute clips that we can send out to people to like a short, small, digestible version, because most people won't sit down. When they see an hour or something, they're not going to watch the whole thing.
The other thing to be aware of is when these points are brought up, they never answer that question. How do you have the container, the gradient in the first place? And it's that refusal to answer the question that they obfuscate. They take it in any other way, any other direction humanly possible, rather than answering the question, which is why Highlander said, you're a pseudoscientist because of blah, blah, blah. Pin them down on the gravity, not on the gravity, pin them down on the container bit, the gradient bit, because you can't have the gradient in the first place. They'll never answer it. So when you realize that they'll never answer that part, you've got them there, and they just won't let you win. They'll do anything to wriggle out of it. Don't let them.
Ask them what the difference between the Earth traveling through space is to a shuttle traveling through space. What's the difference between the two?
Nothing.
Containing gas.
Both would require containment if they're to have gas pressure. Correct, exactly, Jibby.
Well, notice there's a certain force that they used to argue about which would be the cause of that gradient and the air pressure. But they don't argue about it so much nowadays. Anybody notice that?
Yeah, because
They kind of just avoid it a little bit, like sidestep it a bit.
Well, that's what Highlander did. He knows that you can't mention gravity, so he has to obfuscate when I say, well, how do you have the gradient in the first place? They all do the same thing, and they'll find some reason to call you mutt names or call you mum or whatever, but they'll wriggle out of answering that question at all costs. So just say to them, well, where do you get the gradient from? And don't let them obfuscate the point. Make sure they answer.
Well, he went so far to dance away from the point that he brought up your egg experiment, which is, to me, pretty funny, because that's not even going to have anything to do with the current discussion. But okay, keep dodging.
Yeah, you're a pseudoscientist until you can tell me blah, blah, blah about the egg. I mean, what's the egg got to do with it? Forget about the egg. How do you have the gradient in the first place? Oh, well, your mum's a hoe. Oh, really? So no, they'll sweezel it anyway. They'll get out of it no matter what. So don't let them.
They answer questions with questions because they're trying to divert. Yeah.
Someone in Discord, I'll just do a shout out, and there's someone in Discord I think wants to add something. I can see you flashing the quiet riot. Can you say something?
Yes. What do the panel think about the transit of Mercury that's happening right now?
Okay, I'll get their opinions once I've done a quick shout out. So shout out to Dave Rakia Gafford, who says, when I'm not on mute, I'm here to say God is creator. Rakia life. Thank you very much for your support, Dave Rakia Gafford.
Shout out Rakia.
I would say, how do we see Mercury?
Anyone got any attitudes? Why is it transit of Venus?
Mercury. Transit of Mercury.
Mercury, sorry.
It's just a frequency that we know it's a pattern. The Antikythera mechanism tells us a lot of these things that you guys think is predicted by your model. But if you actually try predicting the three-body problem, it's really difficult to do. The computing power required to do it is colossal. And even though you may have it, they get the answers from the Antikythera mechanism, which we could just as easily say is a flat earth mechanism, in the same way that you'll claim that it's got something to do with heliocentrism. But the fact that it's a cyclical repeating cycle thing doesn't mean that it's anything to do with the shape of the earth.
What is the cycle, though?
Hold on, what's the claim in this regard? So before we discuss this, what exactly is the claim that's being made in regards to this occultation?
Mercury is transiting the sun as we speak, predicted decades in advance using heliocentric science.
No, not using heliocentric science. There is no science for heliocentrism.
If that is the case, then how is it predicted today?
Hold on, before you ask us how it's being predicted, what precisely is the claim? How does it prove what? What is it proving, and how does it prove it?
Well, the claim would be that if the science surrounding heliocentrism is wrong and incorrect, or even marginally, even fractionally wrong, then they wouldn't have been able to predict this transit as it is happening today.
There is no science around the heliocentric model. Stop saying that.
Well, as easily as I'm saying it, you're saying it's not happening. So you can't really call me on that one.
Can you present what science you're talking about in regards to the heliocentric model?
You could, without getting into the absolute specifics, you could go on like the universe sandbox, and it would match up exactly. Predicted as to when the transit would occur, which is today. The next one won't occur until 2032. I'd like to see another method of predicting the transit, which will occur again in 2032 without using orbits or any calculations like that.
Let's just summarise your claim then. So you're saying the heliocentric model predicts that you will see the transit of Mercury, or Mercury occulting the sun, and we do see. I hadn't quite finished. We do see this occultation, therefore the Earth is that model. Is that correct?
I'm not saying anything about the shape of the Earth. That's irrelevant to the question.
So what is the question then? So that's what I'm asking. What is your claim, and what is it proving, and how does it prove it? And you're saying it's nothing to do with the shape. Well, this is fascinating. Who cares then? You're saying it doesn't prove anything.
But how does it have nothing to do with the shape of the Earth when you infer the heliocentric model? That's already got a shape, right?
Well, he expressly stated it was predicted by the heliocentric science.
Exactly, my point. So how do you say now it doesn't have anything to do with the shape, but that's wrong? So.
Well, the point is that it doesn't matter whether you believe the shape is, if it's flat or if it's round. The premise is that only using science that says that we are on a sphere and that we are orbiting the sun and that Mercury is also orbiting the sun can we predict the actual transit to the second of when it will occur.
Okay.
If you could predict it for the next one with any other method, I would be happy to hear it.
Dude, that's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. So you're using fallacious reasoning, you're also begging the question.
You're also relying on the results of the Antikythera mechanism.
Yeah, they've been predicted long before your model existed, but that's irrelevant because you've used a fallacy to make this claim.
How have they done that?
Because you're saying...
Can you explain specifically how they have predicted that? I'll be very interested to hear a prediction that does not involve orbits or planets or heliocentrism.
Who cares? It doesn't prove anything. What you have used is a fallacious argument. You have affirmed the consequent with a begging the question fallacy. Assuming...
I mean, you can...
Sorry, mate, I'm trying to explain your fallacy. That means you've got to shut up and listen. Does that not... Is it too difficult?
No, go ahead.
Assuming Earth is a sphere model, that would be if P, Earth a sphere, then transit of Mercury, that would be Q. If P, Earth a sphere, transit of Mercury, Q. Transit of Mercury, Q. Therefore Earth a sphere, P. Affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy based on a begging the question fallacy. That would be if the Earth is a sphere. So we would be starting this example with an assumption that Earth's a sphere now, wouldn't we? A begging the question fallacy. So regardless of how these cycles have been predicted in the past or how your assumption of a sphere predicts these cycles, it would be a begging the question, affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Do you understand?
Yes. Yeah, I agree completely. The fact remains that nobody can tell me how we can predict them without using heliocentric science.
Yeah, Anthony's addressed that. He's told you about models that were used prior to that. The heliocentric
could he be
model
more specific? Because
again, you've made your declaration, having ignored me. Now you're going to talk through the response that you've ignored twice. No, there were models prior to the heliocentric model that predicted these cycles. Can you acknowledge that rather than just stating for the third time that no, it's only heliocentrism, all hail are wrong?
I want you to
I'm asking what these other models are. Can you please know what they are?
Told you.
Explain?
What did Anthony respond? Let's just check, Anthony. What did Anthony tell you when you stated that the first time and he responded? He mentioned a model. Can you remember what the model was he mentioned? Or weren't you listening?
I've heard a lot of models, so I can't remember specifically the one that he mentioned.
He said it about 3.5 minutes ago. He said it 3.5 minutes ago. I take it you weren't listening to him.
Well, I've already given you that answer.
Yeah, he gave it you about 3.5 minutes ago. I'm checking to see if your comprehension and listening skills are above or below par. And a model was stated to you in response to your claim that only the R value and heliocentrism are the predicting guru of them all. That would be wrong. There were models prior to that. One was detailed to you. You ignored it. And by the sounds of things, didn't even comprehend or listen to it.
I think you're telling the truth there.
I'll jump in here. Just want to jump in if I could, just for a second. Airline pilot research, finding the curvature all around the globe. But question for Nathan in the panel.
Who is this? Shut your mouth.
Shut up. What is the sun?
Shut up, whoever you are, you stupid dick. Whoever you are, you're about to get removed if you don't shut your fucking mouth. Shut up! Are you deaf? Did I say, yeah, sure, you just interrupt this conversation and totally hijack it? No, I'm bringing it back on track.
You know why I'm jumping in? Because you're a complete...
No, you're not jumping in. Do you think you can control this show, asshole? No. Anthony will now continue with his pummeling of this dick, who seems to think that heliocentrism is the be-all and end-all of predictive models.
Shut Platypus trying to kill each other.
The Quiet Riot, you seem to be singing rather than listening to Anthony repeat what you could not listen to the first time. Go ahead, Anthony.
So you asked what mechanism would it, or how would a flat Earth model predict this, right? Implying that it was only the heliocentric narrative that could. And then I gave you the answer, which was the Antikythera mechanism. And you obviously whistled past that. And I want to know, what do you understand the Antikythera mechanism to be? Do you know what it is?
I don't know, but I would be very interested for you to explain to me how you will predict, say, the next transit of Mercury. If you could explain exactly how that Antikythera mechanism will do that, that would be amazing. Thank you.
So you don't know what the Antikythera mechanism is then, do you?
No, for all I know, you've just made it up right now. So in light of that, and if we just treat, say, the audience as if they've never heard of it, can you explain exactly how it predicts the transit of Mercury?
Excuse me.
That'd be great.
What? So what, because he's got something you've never fucking heard of, you think he should now school you, rather than you going away and realising that you're dumb, and you've got a religion that you've declared is the be-all and end-all of sky predictions? No, you're just wrong. Shut up!
Put it this way.
Shut up! Not put it this way. Shut your stupid, ignorant mouth. You've been demonstrated to be ignorant. Now don't plead to him to fucking school you. Piss off and realise how fucking wrong you are, you dumb shit!
I don't think you can school me, that's the problem.
No, we're not here to educate thickos.
For like 7 days.
No! We're not here to educate the retards.
Yes.
Yeah, bye-bye. Not here to educate retards. No, you're just wrong. You just think your religion is the only religion, and it's the only mechanism of predicting what happens in the sky. Well, you're wrong. Go away and appreciate just how dumb you are. No, we're not going to teach you about the Antikytherian mechanism. Piss off, you stupid twat.
It was a shame that, Nathan. I really wanted him to. At least he kind of admitted he didn't know about it, but he wanted me to explain it.
You go ahead.
Wanted him to admit.
You go ahead. You're just not gonna be interrupted by him non-stop. Going, no. He just doesn't get to take part while you explain whatever you want to explain. You've got the mic, all yours.
So the thing is, the Antikythera mechanism is basically a clock that was found on the bottom of a seabed. I can't remember what sea it was, but it was an ancient clock, hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they worked out that it was something to do with astrological things in the sky. And when they pieced it all back together, and they realised it was chronographing the sky movement of the planets, and I think there was a couple of asteroids that were also in there. Basically, all this stuff that they claim is based on heliocentric science, they've known about it for hundreds of years with a clock mechanism they found at the bottom of I'm going to say the Mediterranean Sea. It's probably not that one. You can quote me on it if you want to, because somebody will look it up and correct me. But the thing is, we've known about these mechanisms that predict these celestial events for years and years and years, and it's got nothing to do with the heliocentric model. It was known by a repeating cycle theme.
Perfect. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 live stream, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making this live show possible. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
What's the sun? What's Mercury?
Lights in the sky.
Anthony, can you for my sort of quest to debate globers, it'd be really useful if you could summarize why we can't have a pressure gradient.
You need a container. It's in the definition.
Called
just go on to Google.
Second law of thermodynamics.
Sorry, just Google and type in what.
But the claim is that we can have it without a container because we have a pressure gradient, which is why it doesn't get sucked off into space.
Yeah, see, here's where you're kind of messing up. You can't even have gas pressure alone without a container. So therefore, how could you have a gas pressure gradient? It's not possible.
Right.
You need the gas
You don't believe
pressure
there's a gas
first.
pressure gradient?
And the
Say
thing
that
is, you
again?
need science to demonstrate the fact that we point out that this is impossible. We're asking you to prove that you can have gas pressure or a gradient without a container, because that is your belief, right? We're asking for that to be proven. And then somehow, for some reason, nobody ever addresses it directly. They flip the burden of proof against us, or they do some other obfuscation tactic, but it kills your model. And I want to know why it is that you believe that you can have gas pressure in a vacuum without a container, when you can see literally that there is a vacuum testing plant in Ohio that requires a massive, thick 8-foot wall of concrete for it to exist.
Yeah, but you've got a flat earther here asking other flat earthers a question. He's asking you why. He's asking you to explain the gradient.
Sorry,
Right, the flat earther is irrelevant.
It's not possible to have a pressure gradient. It's not possible to have a pressurized system next to a vacuum of space.
Correct.
But then the claim is that the pressure, because there is a pressure gradient, that's why we don't need a container.
But they can't demonstrate.
Yeah, that's their claim, because they're trying to red herring you away from the actual point of you need a container to have the gas pressure in the first place.
It's
you don't have the pressure gradient
herring,
until you already have the gas pressure.
It's reversing the burden
Because
of
it's
proof.
pressurized, regardless of whether it's a gradient or not.
I mean, the logical conclusion to a gradient is eventually it gets to nothing. You have to kind of explain that away in some
that's
fashion.
not the logical conclusion.
Gas doesn't work like that. Unorthodox.
That's not the logical
Unorthodox.
conclusion. The
Gas
second
doesn't
law
work
of
that way.
thermodynamics would defy that logical conclusion as being illogical, because it would be in defiance of a natural law. So good logic doesn't defy natural law.
It's not good logic either.
Yeah, making it bad logic.
It's not even logic.
You know, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth system anyway, so you can throw that out too.
That's called a special pleading fallacy. My religion says the sky is a vacuum. Well, that defies a natural law. Oh, no. Well, because my sky's a vacuum, that law doesn't apply to my sky. That's called a special pleading fallacy.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did.
You
No,
said
I
the
said
second law of
the
thermodynamics doesn't apply to our system? Unorthodox? Is that what you said?
Yeah, the second
Oh,
law
it doesn't.
applies to
Tell us how
two
that
very
happens.
specific systems.
Can we have a citation for that? Some sciencey citation.
Oh, you say natural law doesn't apply here. Well, here is his fundamentalist belief in what Earth is. Earth being most definitely something natural, and he says this natural law doesn't apply. Well, why doesn't it apply? Well, because he believes a region he can never go to, outer space, is allowed, and logically, according to him, air would just naturally dissipate into a vacuum. No, it wouldn't. It would disperse into a vacuum. It's called entropy.
Basically what I'm saying is you're applying the law to a system that the law isn't supposed to be applied to. Not every law.
That's special
Law of
pleading.
thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth. Oh my God, you're a moron.
It's special pleading. It doesn't apply to my sky vacuum. My religion doesn't have to have natural law apply to it.
Can I just ask why you think it doesn't apply to Earth?
He's actually insane.
Yeah.
Can I
Because
ask
it's
why you
in
think
the
it doesn't apply
definition
to
of
Earth?
the second law itself. The second law itself states entropy of an isolated system never increases. So it's a third of the actual definition.
What I tell you guys?
So does, by the
So
same
you have to make a
standards
case
then,
for the Earth being an isolated system or only flowing heat in one direction. That's the only other specialized case it can happen in.
it's dispersion of the energy into a given system.
Let me find some citations. Hold on.
Hang on, are you saying
Unorthodox? Does an isolated system exist?
Hang on, are you saying it doesn't apply to Earth because the Earth's not an isolated system, therefore the second law only applies to isolated systems?
Yes, that's
exactly.
Yes, exactly. It's only taken into very extreme situations. We kind of presume the Earth, or I mean, I'm sorry, the universe is an isolated system.
So why do you think
Yeah,
that
I
it
had
doesn't
somebody
apply to
making
an
this
open
point to
system?
me the
Hold
other
on.
day.
He's just said the universe is an isolated system. So this natural law would apply then.
No, the universe as a
Wow.
whole.
So the
Not the
universe
Earth,
as a whole.
not the Earth system. The universe as a whole.
Yes, you don't need to repeat it 3 times. I'm repeating it. So according to you and Orthodox, the universe as a whole is an isolated system. And this natural law, specifically according to you, and is limited to, according to you, isolated systems. So by your standards, this natural law, the second law of thermodynamics that would dictate entropy would increase into that system, in this case, the entirety of the universe. So therefore, based on that law, the gas would fill the space.
No, there's a difference between the universe as a whole and the Earth and atmosphere as a system.
Sorry,
I'm
is the
defining a
universe,
system
just
as the
for
Earth
clarity,
and
just
atmosphere
so
being
in
an
case you're
isolated
disagreeing
system.
with my
I'm
summary,
defining
just
the
in case you're
universe
disagreeing
that
with my
is
summary.
contained
So
as
just
an
in
isolated
case you're disagreeing with my summary, are you now saying the universe is not an isolated system, even though such a system
No, I'm
doesn't?
saying the Earth and the atmosphere are not isolated systems. The universe as itself is an isolated system.
So
Really?
therefore,
That's
the Earth is in the universe without containment, and this law would apply even by your stupid standards, where you think this only applies to an isolated system, something that simply doesn't exist. It's a natural law simplified to describe how it will apply always, and is simplified using ideal circumstances. That would be an isolated system, something that does not exist in nature. But you're saying this description of something that applies always in nature doesn't apply in nature because it only applies to something that doesn't exist in nature.
You're debunking your whole argument. You're saying isolated systems aren't real, but the second law of thermo hinges on the fact that isolated systems can be a real thing.
They're not real.
Wow.
Isolated systems are no more real than ideal gases. You know, gas law still applies always. It's law. It's natural law. Second law of thermodynamics applies in nature. It's a natural law. Ideal gas law applies in nature. It's a law. But there aren't any ideal gases. So you're saying that the laws applied to all gases always don't apply because they're being described with an ideal gas in the same way as an isolated system, neither of which exist. So therefore these natural laws should be ignored.
It's a simplification.
Yeah, of something that applies in nature always, regardless of open or closed, described and summarized, simplified by an isolated system in the case of the second law of thermodynamics, or with ideal gas in the case of gas law, neither of which exists, but natural law still applies.
How is this derived, Nathan? So this just popped out of thin air. You're telling me like a note floated down from God and it had the second law on it?
So your
Is that
own
what you're telling
ignorance
me?
is
It
the
wasn't
reason why you're
caused by
asking this question.
mankind?
Right?
No, he wants to deny the second law. He wants to deny natural law.
No,
That's the bottom line.
He's trying
And
to hide the fact that he doesn't understand it. He's trying to blame it on where's this come from just because he didn't understand it in the first place.
No. What he's saying is, no. What he's saying is the laws of thermodynamics don't apply to nature.
They were created by man.
I told
They weren't
you
gifted to
at some
by
point
God.
this was going to happen because when they look up second law of thermodynamics, it talks about an isolated system and entropy.
Exactly.
So they try to apply it. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You unfortunately don't realize that an isolated system doesn't actually exist. Okay. You're talking about something they use just like Nathan just told you, just like ideal gases, ideal gas law. There's no such thing as an ideal gas. Okay? Something they use to, like you said, simplify it. But see, now what your problem is that you're saying that the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the world that we live in right now, currently. So you're sounding like Rumpus a little bit, and you sound very confused.
No, he's not just saying that because all the laws of thermodynamics are couched in an isolated system. So what he's exactly saying is the laws of thermodynamics, natural laws, don't apply to nature.
yeah, that's what he's saying. Natural law
Yeah,
doesn't apply
These
to
weren't
nature.
gifted to you by God, my people. These were gifted to you by men. Men created these laws. This isn't a
No, laws
natural
of
law
nature are
given
not
to you by.
created. That's why they're
This
called
is
laws
a
of nature.
natural law created by scientists.
No.
From Calibra text, the second law occurs all around us all of the time, existing as the biggest, most powerful general idea in all of science. You, sir, are a schmuck.
And
thank you.
That law would dictate that the energy would dissipate into the available volume. That's what that law dictates. And Earth doesn't have any containment. Ergo, if the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill that space. Because it's a natural law. Entropy would increase.
Have you queried a scientist on this, Nathan?
Scientists.
Yeah, we'll do it. Isaac Asimov,
Have you queried
PhD, biochemistry. Shut him up. In the game of energy and thermodynamics, you can't break even. Smithsonian Institute. Here's what he says. Another way of stating the second law then is the universe is constantly getting more disorderly. Viewed that way, we can see the second law all about us. We have to work hard to straighten a room, but left to itself, it becomes a mess again very quickly and very easily. Even if we never enter it, it becomes dusty and musty. How difficult to maintain houses and machinery and our bodies in perfect working order. How easy to let them deteriorate. In fact, all we have to do is nothing, and everything deteriorates, collapses, breaks down, wears out all by itself. And that is what the second law is all about. You, sir, are a schmuck of epic proportions.
Okay, so all you have to do to work against that is input some work.
Yeah.
Or heat and reverse the effects of the second law. You just said all you gotta do is maintain your equipment, eat healthy.
Why would we do that?
Right? You can
We
work
don't
against
need
the second
to.
law.
You said the second
Can we
law
not
doesn't
maintain
apply
our
to
equipment? Can we not clean up our room?
You
Is
said
that
we
what you're
don't.
saying?
The second law doesn't apply to the earth. Why would we need to do that?
Yeah, you kind of played
You're the
yourself
one
there, but
saying it applies
said
to
the
Earth.
second law doesn't apply, but now you got to input
You're the
some
one
work.
saying it applies. I'm the one saying it doesn't apply.
But that's what you said.
No, you got it backwards. I'm saying
You
it doesn't apply.
came
You
in.
guys
You
are saying
came
it
in
does
with the
apply.
whole statement of
Okay,
the
no worries,
second law
Chocolate,
of
that's okay.
thermodynamics applies only to isolated systems.
So does it apply to Earth then? Now that we've straightened you out that it absolutely does in all circumstances, you appreciate that it does apply to Earth then?
Well, according to QE's quote, all you have to do is work against it. All you have to do is tidy up your room, maintain your equipment, do some maintenance, or eat
It's
healthy,
a
or go to the doctor.
natural law, you clown. It has
Right.
nothing to do with human intervention. Define natural law.
No, neither did Highlander.
That's why I said
Natural laws are derived from principles we see around us. They have underlying
I didn't ask you that.
principles.
I didn't ask you that, you clown. Natural laws. As soon as you
Natural law.
invoke a human involved in controverting it or in some way halting it or reversing it, that has nothing to do with the natural law itself, you clown.
Do you want to give an example? With
Natural.
I'd like to be really,
it's all right.
I'd like to be really specific
sorry,
here.
unorthodox. Sorry to interrupt you. Can you give the example with that jigsaw puzzle that you gave to me? Do you remember, QE? It was about 6 months ago. About
The
dropping
jigsaw puzzle, when
Yeah,
you
you
drop
drop
the
a-
jigsaw puzzle on the floor, it increases entropy.
Correct. Yeah, that example, please.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to by itself put it back together again. Right? That violates the second law of thermodynamics. Now, if you put it together, well, that takes the second law of thermodynamics away because the laws of thermodynamics speak to natural circumstances.
Okay, let me second that. Okay, I have to come up with the two chemicals, but I think you'll understand the principle sound. So I have one chemical, I crush it up. Okay, I have a second chemical, I'm gonna crush that chemical up. I mix them together. They reorder themselves into a different state.
Okay. So what?
No. Well, there you go. You have something being reordered.
No. That ordered and disordered is not No, wrong. That has nothing to do
Chemical
with entropy.
processes happen all the time throughout the world. I could come up with many examples in living biology.
Yeah, well, you got that wrong too. Here we go. This view was broached. This was from the entropy site.oxy.edu. This view was broached partially in a previous article that showed disorder was outmoded and misleading as a descriptor of entropy. Definition number 2. Entropy is not disorder, not a measure of disorder, not a driving force. Last one, Chem Libre text. There is no basis in physical science for interpreting entropy change as involving order and disorder. You, sir, are a schmuck. Thanks.
I just used your stated examples against you. So
How did you do that?
You can't use anything. You're a clown.
How did you use our examples against us?
Well, he said the second law of entropy, blah, 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 bodies degrading, machines degrading, and I forget the third one, but you can work against that. You can maintain
Here
machines.
we go again.
He addressed this. He didn't listen. He didn't listen. He didn't listen.
Unorthodox.
He's just described
Being
this
that-
with example.
Sorry.
So he described having a jigsaw puzzle and dropping it on the floor, demonstrating analogous to, however you want to describe it, entropy increase. Then you come along and reorder that jigsaw puzzle so that it's the picture with all the pieces. Now, you have intervened. Now, the law is describing nature, how nature behaves. And naturally, you will experience entropy increase. So the jigsaw puzzle, in its form, after you've put it back together, if you do nothing, it will naturally decay until it's dust. You can't even see it anymore. That's entropy increase. Naturally, it will occur regardless. Now, you could argue that you can come along and paint the thing with varnish, or vacuum seal it, or put it in a frame. Well, yeah, you can. But once you've done all those things, entropy will still increase. It's a natural law, applicable always.
Anytime you remove heat from a system without doing mechanical work on the system, and
Listen
without
to this.
injecting heat,
Hey,
you are
Nathan,
decreasing
he's-
entropy. It happens all the time in the natural world.
He's
Sorry,
just jerking us. He was the same guy with the
incorrect.
horse hooves back in the day.
He just said if
talking
you
about
remove...
I've got the
He's
equations
wrong.
worked out.
He's
If you guys
wrong.
look
I
at
just
the
want to show
equation.
how wrong. He just said if you remove heat from a system, you will increase the entropy.
Yes, there's two. I didn't get to this earlier. There's two very specific systems where you can actually kind of break this, or the second law applies to. Okay, when you input heat into a system, or I'm sorry, when you remove heat from a system. I'm maybe stating this wrong. I have to look at my notes. But there's two specific examples. One is the isolated system, and then there's heat flowing in one direction. And if I'm not mistaken,
Just to
if I'm not
confirm
mistaken,
what you
when
said
remove
already, I don't care about what your notes say. You've already stated verbally that if you remove heat, entropy will increase. That's what you stated.
decrease.
So now decrease?
Yeah, decrease. It's stated as it increases over time.
So the rate of entropy, i.e. the amount over time, will decrease. So you will still have entropy occurring, but you will decrease that rate. So absolutely entropy would be occurring. So we finally have a concession. You appreciate that regardless of your isolated system argument, entropy would still increase. The energy of the gas would fill the available volume of the sky vacuum if outer space was real, which it isn't. Entropy is real. The gas would fill the space.
Bingo.
I'm using push to talk here. We're talking about directionality here. We're talking about increase versus a decrease. Just entropy happening doesn't apply to the second law.
He said that the universe was an isolated system, right? Hyperphysics.gsu.edu. An isolated system implies a collection of matter which does not interact with the rest of the universe at all. And as far as we know, there are no such systems. So how do you know that the universe is an isolated system and hyperphysics.edu says there aren't any?
Then you're undermining and debunking your entire argument.
It's just a nonsense.
Wow.
Complete nonsense.
Can you explain?
bro. You debunked yourself.
That
Do
it?
you not get-
Is that it? Your response is, well, that means you've debunked yourself then. That's your response.
Anybody can look up the second law and see that it applies to isolated systems.
Yeah, that was the original claim. We've just spent about the last 10 minutes, 8 minutes, going through how it always applies to Earth, and you've explained how you can slow down the rate of entropy. Obviously, by stating that, you have conceded that this applies in nature. Not that we needed your affirmation, you complete bonehead. This is natural law we're talking about. The fact that you don't understand it and try to define it with notes that you don't understand that you're reading off just tells us that you're here to defend your religion with some ham-handed crap about what you don't understand, in this case entropy.
You contradicted yourself about it.
Yeah, guys. Don't get
Like I
notes
said,
from
I'm
Xanic, guys.
I want to clarify.
Leave that alone.
Or do you appreciate that you've contradicted yourself no less than 30 to 35 times already?
Yeah, I would disagree.
No, essay.
I think I might have said something incorrectly once. But if you say that there's no such thing as isolated systems, there's nothing to apply the second law to. Like, if you have a law of...
Oh, so why the hell would it exist? Oh yeah, that's why we have this natural law, so that they can waste a whole load of time describing something that never applies ever. Even though you've specifically described how you'll slow down this effect. You've already conceded, but what you're saying now is, oh, well, because there's no isolated system, this never applies ever, even though I'm arguing for how you can decrease the effects over time.
This is what we do in physics and engineering. You look at an extreme case to learn
Unorthodox. Does
about
entropy
the bigger
exist?
On your
picture.
face, run around and whistle Dixie. You're a schmuck.
Does entropy exist?
Just look up the second law of thermodynamics. It states it's from an
But
isolated
does-
system.
Yeah, we know. We know.
Wow.
We went through this. We've gone through it 4 or 5 times. Ideal gas law applies to gases, regardless of the fact there aren't any ideal gases. But that's how it's described in the law. There are no isolated systems, yet entropy applies always. It's a natural law. Just because it's detailed using an ideal circumstance doesn't mean that it doesn't apply. We wouldn't have it as a natural law, you complete idiot.
Like I said, we look at
Unorthodox.
extreme
Can I
cases
ask you a
of
question,
engineering
Unorthodox?
to gather understanding about the bigger picture. So whenever you're looking at systems, you have to define the system exactly what it is, what its boundaries are, what's coming in and out, heat, work, or
I see.
or
So let's
mass,
define some
or-
systems. No worries. Let's define it. Is the heliocentric system open or closed?
Well, it's typically isolated.
So there are no isolated systems. There are...
Wow.
Idiot.
What?
There are no isolated systems. We've just covered this.
Typically
You're
not
deaf,
isolated.
dumb, or
Only
retarded.
energy.
We've just covered
Typically.
this. Is it open
I misspoke.
or is it closed?
I believe it's open, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well then in an open system, the gas would fill the space.
It's either open or closed, depending on how you want
Yeah,
to look
yeah,
at it.
that was
what
my
time scale you
question.
wanna look
Which
at
is it, open or closed?
If you
So
wanna
to answer
consider
open
asteroids
and then
as
say
mass
it's
entering
either
out.
open or closed is just nonsensical word salad.
Unorthodox. Do you know the difference between the two?
Yeah, one is defined in terms of energy only, entering and leaving. The other is defined in terms of energy and mass.
So matter can leave an open system, Earth being an open system and gas being matter. So matter can leave. And what does gas law dictate? Oh, well,
But it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Oh, it's time for rumpusing, isn't it? Yeah, this is the bit where your religion dies on its arse. Please don't interrupt me. Yeah, the matter would be the gas, and the space would be space. The sky vacuum would be the volume that gas could occupy. And for some reason you appeal to a gas pressure gradient for the reason why it's not filling the volume. Well, no, natural law would dictate that it would fill that volume if that was a volume it could fill. But it's not filling it, therefore it's not a volume it can fill. There is no outer space, the sky is not a vacuum. It violates gas law and the second law of thermodynamics.
And Pascal's law.
Well, he also said he misspoke, and then he said open is closed and closed is open, so it's doublespeak.
Yeah. Word salad, garbage, nonsense.
Oh, apparently he understands the difference between an open and closed system. I'm wondering why he thinks the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to you either, and only an isolated system.
Because
does he not think entropy exists?
Because it's the definition. It's the definition of
Why?
the
It's
second
the
law.
first line of the definition, so that's what you go with? Really?
No, it's the definition. It's part of the definition. You're removing part of the definition to.
Yeah, we understand it's part of the definition. His question is, do you therefore think that it doesn't apply in nature, this natural law?
Oh, sure, it defines in nature whenever the system is isolated.
No, there are no isolated systems ever. We've covered this 3 times.
So there's another example where heat is being injected.
All right, so based on, look, let's summarize. Based on your conception that it only applies to an ideal circumstance, in this instance, an isolated system, would you therefore say, yes or no, closed question, that the second law, natural law of thermodynamics, does not apply to Earth because there are no isolated systems? Is that your position, yes or no?
Yes.
You think a natural law doesn't apply to nature? Complete retard.
Can I ask him a question?
By scientists and engineers who are looking at systems that they're creating.
Right, I don't need to hear anything ever from you, ever. You think
Let me ask
a
him.
natural law doesn't apply to nature? That's the most retarded thing I think I've ever heard sat here.
Let me ask him a question. If there's a space vehicle in space, is it an open or closed space vehicle?
A space vehicle? Space?
Yeah,
Would
like
be
like a
thermos.
spaceship and 10 to the minus 17 torr, vacuum of space. Is it an open or closed system?
It would be closed. Unless
Why?
they're ejecting mass somehow or inserting mass, then it would be an open system.
Why would it need to be
But
closed?
there's also systems that you create work on or you remove work from. So there's actually 4 systems.
Is it?
Or 5,
you said it's
excuse
a
me.
closed system. And my question is, why is it closed? What would happen if a hatch was opened?
It would become an open system.
What would fill the space?
Do what? What would fill what space?
Nathan, summarize this
interior?
for me, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
So
not
if
going
you-
to deny if you throw gravity out of the equation and don't look at the Earth system as a whole, you can find examples of
We're
gas
in
being removed
space.
via a vacuum.
We're
I'm
in
not going to deny that.
space. Why are you dancing around such a simple answer?
I answered the question for you.
Well, let's
I
go
said-
slower.
I
We're in
wasn't really sure what
space.
the question was originally.
How much gravity is in space?
Well, it's microgravity. You're basically counteracting it.
If you're in the
So
spaceship,
effectively zero.
and
Effectively
Can you
zero.
stop
Or microgravity.
can you? Okay, tell me when you're done.
I'm done.
Thank you. You said that a spaceship in outer space, 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, is a closed system. I said, why? And then you danced. So now I say, if you open up a hatch and you have all that oxygen inside, what would happen? Then you dance. Why are you dancing?
I admitted that if there's cases where you can have a system and when you open it, gas will escape. I admitted that. I don't know if you heard me, but I'm not going to deny the fact that in some situations, if you have a gas container and you release it and you open the system, then it will indeed flow out of that system. But I'm not going to disregard the entirety of the Earth.
Can you
But yes, in
demonstrate
terms
what you're saying?
I said, you're correct.
Can you demonstrate gas pressure without a container?
Beyond your fundamentalist
Yeah, I
religious
can.
belief.
I can actually. This is the exact
Beyond,
reason why I came on.
beyond your fundamentalist religious belief, please don't use circular reasoning and just point to the sky. You're not a NASA astronaut's son. Circular reasoning will not wash here. Don't just point at the sky.
I'm not.
Or-
Okay, are you guys ready? Hey, you guys have been asking for this for a long time. You asked for somebody to come on and prove gravity. I did that twice. You've been asking for somebody to come on and prove gas pressure without a container for a long time. I'm going to come on and do that too, okay? So here you go. You guys
proved
ready?
Gravity, all right.
Beyond your fundamental belief.
Hell yeah.
Nathan, you interrupted my demonstration.
Yeah, I'm going to make my clarity, whether or not you like it. I run this show, people don't seem to get it. Yeah, it's like, oh, he's muting me. Yeah, I'm going to talk. Yeah, I'm going to make it plain. You don't have to like this. Beyond your fundamentalist religious belief about what the sky is. In other words, don't just point at the sky and say the atmosphere would do X, Y, and Z. That's circular reasoning. Do you understand what I've said?
I do.
Thanks.
Would you like the demonstration now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes. Here we go. Here's the demonstration.
Oh my God.
So why haven't you got the pressure anymore? Why haven't you got the gas pressure anymore?
There you go, man.
Why has it stopped?
Yeah,
But you haven't got gas pressure anymore. It's put off.
Sorry.
Sir, your
There you go.
blowing?
There was the demonstration.
Their demonstration of you
Picture
blowing?
has you basically with your head sticking out of the sand. You should finish that job and put your head all the way in the sand with your body.
Hold on. Now tell me what was wrong with my demonstration. At least you can't just hand wave it away. You got to at least tell me what's wrong with it.
Where did you get that gas pressure that you blew in the first place?
But where
that
is that
wasn't
gas
part
pressure
of the
now, mate?
demonstration. The demonstration was specifically for gas pressure without a container. You didn't ask me. You didn't
But
say
where is the
anywhere
gas pressure?
where the gas
Where is
from.
pressure?
Now you're moving the goalpost on me.
It's gone.
Your lungs were the container.
It's gone. You
Not where they were
demonstrated
demonstrated. It was demonstrated on the microphone.
Yeah, you demonstrated it escaping a container. Your lungs.
Yeah. So where's
And-
the gas? Where is that pressure now when you've blown into the mic? Where's that pressure gone?
It's filled the available volume. That
No, I want
it's
him
in.
to say, unorthodox. Where's the pressure gone that you created when you blew onto the microphone?
It went onto the microphone. It bounced off it, and it kind of escaped.
Yeah.
Oh, escaped.
Regardless,
Escaped.
demonstrate what you guys want to demonstrate.
Sorry, escaped. Yeah, not rumpusing. We also need to make conclusions beyond your shit blowing down your microphone. So, at the point that you conceded to Anthony that it's escaped, we're no longer hearing that gas pressure because it's escaped your lungs, the container that created it, based on the originality that we had gas pressure for you to do that, which is the question being asked, another red herring. So this is a red herring. We're asking how Earth can have the gas pressure for you to be able to fill your bloody lungs to blow on the mic. Not that that's maintained, it's now dissipated into the available volume at whatever rate it was changed to when it was processed through your lungs.
God's blowing on us.
Yeah, it's gone now. It's filled the available volume. You blew, you emptied your volume, the container inside your lungs, and now that has filled the available volume. You're not maintaining that gas pressure blowing continually. There's not a strip of wind blowing past the mic for forevermore. No, entropy's increased. That gas has filled the available volume. That's what entropy is.
What are the units of entropy?
Sorry, why are you asking me this question? Where did you get the gas to fill your lungs? How have you got that gas, given that you believe the sky is a vacuum and that's an available volume, that the gas you're actually filling your lungs with would have filled, it would have dissipated into the space of a sky vacuum, and you wouldn't be able to blow on the mic. So I want to know how the hell you managed to blow on the mic. Where did you get the gas to fill your lungs?
The surface area of my lungs.
Where did you get the gas to fill them?
Uncontained system.
Where did you get that gas?
There's no lid on it.
Just ignoring me.
Where did I get that from? The atmosphere.
Oh right. So the atmosphere. So the gas needs a container because the atmosphere, according to you and the heliocentric religion, is an open system in a sky vacuum, and that would be the volume that gas would want to fill by way of entropy, the dispersion of the energy into the available volume. Now, we have gas for you to blow on a mic, which would mean that the sky definitely can't be a vacuum.
I know. You said the question was, can there be gas pressure without a container? I demonstrated it is utterly 100% possible for there to be gas pressure.
No. What you demonstrated is a moment.
And we asked you where you got it from. And we asked you where you got it from. And you said from the atmosphere. Well,
No,
the atmosphere...
we asked, where did it go? Where did it go when you created the pressure?
Does he not think
You know,
his lungs
I
are
just
a
wanna come
container?
here.
Hang on. Does he not think his lungs are a container?
Where's the gas pressure gone on Orthodox?
I wasn't
Answer my fucking
demonstrating the gas
question.
pressure.
Where did it go?
I just want to come on here for a bit. I tell you what, I'm gonna go back to the drawing board, and I'm gonna get you the original derivation of the law that was created by men. Okay, the second law
Go back
gifted
to
to us
romper
by God.
room, you
All that on a
friggin'
piece of
schmuck.
paper.
You're a schmuck.
What an idiot. Natural laws don't apply to nature. Unorthodox
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, he's gonna make my Audacity line, and you're already toe tagged. I think I got about 3 videos on my channel that's gonna be you're gonna be made a star, son, clown.
You want to make your summary, Anthony? You've been trying to get in for about 10 minutes. Anthony?
What?
You want to make your summary?
Yeah, they always wiggle like a bitch when you ask them, how do you have the container in the gradient in the first place? And they will do anything to avoid answering that question. So what we need to do is pin them down and get them to basically point out each time when they try wiggling that they can't answer the question, where does the gradient come from in the first place in an open system? They never, ever answer it, ever.
Right. Where'd you get the gas to fill your lungs? Anyone else got anything to conclude?
Yeah, this guy, by the way, this was a great segment. This is a keeper. This will show anybody who can say 2 and 2 is 4 to see how stupid the heliocentric positions are when it comes to gas pressure without a container. He's using his lungs, which are a container. This is hillbilly blue balls, except instead of a pipe, it's his lungs.
Yeah.
More for any more?
Yeah, shameless plug. It's Evolution Week on the QE channel. So it started with Ball Busters, and tomorrow it's going to continue. So be there or be sphere.
Be here or be sphere. Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. 12th of, what is it now? October? November. 12th of November 2019 on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. 7 PM UK time, 1 PM Central Standard. Be here or be sphere.
Thank
Are we
you.
on a live show?
Go on, Highlander.
Are we on a live show?
No, just in the after show at the minute. I left you on mute, yeah. Go on, Highlander.
Yeah, on mute.
You want to add something?
I'm back.
Highlander, what'd you think of that guy that we just talked about? Do you agree with him?
Not everything said, no.
Very wise answer.
What did he say?
Said not everything, no.
I mean, the blowing air from your lungs to prove gas pressure without a container is, to me, that's not evidence.
How do you have the gradient in the first place to have the atmospheric pressure?
Mother Nature created the gradient. We all know that.
Mother Nature.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you
Sorry, I
believe
don't
in
know
a
that.
creator, then you must believe in Mother Nature. Yeah,
But we're not asking the question about who created it. We're asking about how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean how it works? Are you asking me, does gravity create the pressure gradient? If that's the question, then the answer is yes.
How is it supposed to do that? It's not even a force.
That's the question. No, we weren't asking that. We weren't asking how the bending of a conceptual medium known as space-time would give rise to a force strong enough to defy entropy. No, we weren't asking that. We know that gravity's not a force, nor will it maintain gas pressure without a container. So no, we definitely weren't asking you that.
We're asking you how you can have delta X before you can X.
I mean, you scream and shout about the law of thermodynamics, but gravity is a law.
No, it isn't.
Now, that's an equivocation fallacy. Gravity is not a law. It is Einsteinian's theory, right? Theories aren't laws. So you're about 150 years prepared in the wrong pseudoscience.
Wait, I may have a new angle to this. So, question to the guy in Discord.
I just posted it in the chat.
Right, so
Newtonian law of gravity.
the gradient. What is the
It's
gas
in the
pressure
chat.
gradient within?
Newtonian's law of universal gravitation.
That's not an answer to my
Hold on.
question.
Hold on.
A law.
Hold on.
Sorry, Arwen,
Gravity
can you
is a
repeat what
law.
you just said?
You can, but just in a moment. Once Highlander's had his piece. Go ahead, Highlander.
I was just saying, I posted it in the chat. Newtonian's law of universal gravitation.
What is the law? Can you tell us what that law is, please?
You want me to read it to you, or
Yeah, tell us what the
can
law
you not
is.
see it in the chat?
Not the title of it. What is
I think
that
it
law?
was a law, now it's a scientific principle.
Sorry, whoever that was. I'm just asking Highlander if he can tell us what that law is. Not the title.
Right, so you want me to read it to you?
You asked me
please.
that twice. I'm asking
Can
you
you
to
not
tell me
see it
what
in the
I
chat?
don't-
No.
I'm not asking you to read off verbatim. If that's what you do, that's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying, can you tell me what that law is?
The law is usually stated that every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force which is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square distance between the centers. Is that good enough?
Yeah, there's a few problems. So, this claim to be scientific law has the word masses in it. What's that?
Right. So is mass not a thing then?
Sorry, that's not what I asked. If you're defining things like scientific laws or laws of nature, then you have to be very specific about what each word means, how it's defined, so we understand what this law actually does and how it is applicable. So we'd need to, in this instance, because we're not talking mass in a colloquial sense, we're talking about it in terms of natural law. So what do they mean when they say mass?
So now you want me to explain to you what mass is?
Yeah, it's part of the definition that you've just given us for this claim to be law.
Right, so now you're claiming that it's not a law.
No, that's not what I said. I asked, for the love of God. No, I haven't done that yet. I'm leading you to tell us what you believe this law is and define the terms in that law that you've just stated. One of them being mass. What is mass? It must be rigorously defined if this is to be taken seriously as science. So what's mass?
Right. An object's mass is also determines the strength of gravitational attraction between other bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, I already told you I didn't want you to read out. I'm not asking you to read. I'm asking you what to define part of your definition of what this law is. And part of it is mass. What is that?
Mass is both a property of physical body and a measurement of its resistance to acceleration.
That's two things. That's two things. That's two things. Is there an echo? Is my mic working? That's two things. So this doesn't have a rigorous definition for what mass is then. It's defined as two different things. Well, this isn't to be taken seriously. We've got a definition of something that has two different descriptions. Well, that's horseshit. That's not a rigorous definition, is it?
Got a name for that, Nathan, when it's got two different meanings.
It's not being rigorously defined in this explanation. Apparently it's two different things at once. Well, that's an equivocation fallacy.
He also just defined inertia.
Yeah. So rather than a law, it's a law utilizing an equivocation fallacy. Well, this isn't a law. Also, it's 100 plus years out of date, superseded, no longer relevant, because it's been replaced by Newtonian, Einsteinian nonsense. Pseudo-Ramonian force space, bending of a conceptual medium known as space-time, giving rise to a non-force force that you can think of as a force called gravity. Well, that's not Newtonian. Never was.
Does he even know the formula for Newtonian gravity?
Oh, that's what I was hoping he'd give. I didn't get that far with him. I didn't think he'd... Do you know the formula?
Off the top of my head, no.
Highlander, post the formula in live stream.
I don't feel as though.
Sorry, say that again.
We wanted you to post the formula. Then Anthony can have the last word.
Post the formula for gravity, Newtonian gravity, in live stream.
You want me to post the formula for gravity in the live stream?
Yes.
Do you have something you wanted to add, Anthony?
I don't feel as though we've had an adequate answer for the question I asked, which was, how do you have the gradient in the first place? We don't seem to have had an adequate answer.
Oh, you never get an adequate answer from you anyway, Sleeping Warrior. I've been asking you for weeks and weeks for the fine details of your egg experiment, yeah? Because according to you,
are you serious?
An experiment must be repeatable, yeah? But every time I ask you, you come out with some sort of bullshit and you won't give me the details of your experiment.
Highlander.
So,
You got a problem with
I don't want
relative
to speak to you,
density? Take it
Sleeping
up with
Warrior,
me.
because you're just full of shit. Yeah, that's all you are. A pseudoscientist.
Highlander, what
shit.
part of the egg experiment did you not understand?
Yeah, this is a red herring.
How do you have the gradient in the first place? Answering, please.
Yeah, that's the question.
What part? I'm not speaking to you, Sleeping Warrior, because you're a pseudoscientist. Full of
Well, let me repeat my question from 10 minutes ago.
I'm going to
Wait
round
a
out.
second.
The gradient of gas.
No,
in
it's a red
what is
herring.
it?
Arwin, I'm just about to round out and I want delta X and X detail. That's all I want to hear. And then I'm going to round out.
And Newtonian's formula.
So we're waiting for the Newtonian formula of gravitation. Apparently a law. It isn't. It's been superseded by Einsteinian bullshit, bending of pseudo-Ramonian force space. Anyway, delta X and X. The question on the table from Anthony was, how do you have gas pressure in the first place? In rebuttal to the gas pressure gradient claim. Right, no one's going to do it. You can't have a gas pressure gradient, that would be delta X, without first having X. So you can't have a gradient without first having gas pressure. Gas pressure comes first. And you can't have gas pressure without a container. And with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who did tune in on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Again, a massive thank you to all of today's Discord and G+ panels for making this after show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!